Crown Toyota and Crown Volkswagen, getting you where you need to go, celebrating over 30 years and honored by Best of Lawrence. Visit crownautomotive.com and explore the latest models, check out specials, schedule expert maintenance, body shop, and repair services, all with ease. Experience the Crown difference. Miles Snares Crown Automotive, 3400 South Iowa, Lawrence, Kansas. Supporting Kansas athletics.
Kick off your holiday season with a festive walk through the lights at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. The Luminary Walk is celebrating 26 years of bringing holiday magic to the community, proudly presented by FNBO, Westlake Ace Hardware, Sarin Energy Solutions, and WeLightKC.com. Wander through glowing gnome and fairy villages, candlelit winter woods, live music, and thousands of electric lights. Tickets available today at opabg.org.
Listen up, guys. A new year is coming, and you deserve to feel your absolute best. Whether you're chasing peak performance, trying to reignite intimacy, or simply want to feel your best, Game Day Men's Health Lawrence is your calling. Situated in a plush man cave setting, their services for testosterone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, vitamin therapy, and weight loss are sure to give you the boost you need. Make an online appointment today by searching for Game Day Men's Health Lawrence. Step up your game in 2025 with Game Day.
Transform your home into a serene oasis with a pro-built pool and patio sunroom. Their expertly crafted sunrooms offer breathtaking views, natural light, and year-round comfort. Whether you're relaxing, entertaining, or simply enjoying the beauty of nature, their sunrooms are the perfect addition to your home. Visit them at 4708 Northwest Gateway Avenue in Riverside to see their stunning selection. Pro-built pool and patio, where your dream living space comes to life.
Hey Kansas City, Ochai Baji here. When I keep up with my Oak Park Northmen, there's only one place I go. 810 Varsity and 810varsity.com.
Scores, features, rankings, predictions, and playoff brackets. Watch games online and, of course, the best social media coverage from Lawrence to Lee Summit, Lenexa to Liberty. Plus, the region's biggest events with college combines, basketball showcases, and more. All at one place. And I'll let Ochai tell you again.
Check it out now. Kansas City's home for high school sports. 810varsity.com.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from Family Leisure. Come to Family Leisure so we can make your holiday shopping easy. We are your one-stop shop for incredible deals on hot tubs, arcade games, theater seats, grills, massage chairs, and much more in stock and ready to go. Come in for your Chiefs fan to see our inventory of Chiefs clocks, banners, and area rugs. Decorate your game room with our dartboards, gaming chairs, pool, and shuffleboard tables. Mention 810 and save more at Family Leisure, K10 and Ridgeview in Olathe.
Awesome.
What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out kansasnation.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. My name is Nate Bukaty. I'm filling in for Sean Kellerman and Daniel Courtwright this week, and we've had a busy week, and we've got more to come over the next couple of days. Today's a show that I'm really excited about. We're going to talk with some good friends of mine. Number one, Brandon McAnderson, the one-time great running back at the University of Kansas, Orange Bowl champion, of course, sideline reporter for KU football. We're going to unpack really this past season for Kansas football, talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses, what they will look to address going into the offseason, and also have a really good conversation with BMAC about the current state of college football, where we are with these bowl games, the playoff system, the format that we're going in through right now, maybe some of the tweaks that, let's be honest, this is a system that's going to keep changing and evolving as we go. Every year they're going to make some tweaks. So we'll give some of our thoughts and opinions on how the system can be improved even more, maybe solve some of the problems with college football, me and Brandon McAnderson. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. We also are going to have a conversation with C.J. Moore. He's locally based college basketball writer for The Athletic. If you get a chance to read his stuff, I think you should definitely do so. Really good guy and has a good perspective. Covers Kansas pretty closely because he's in the area, but also just covers college basketball as a whole, nationwide. And we're starting to get a clearer picture of where these programs stand as we get closer to that Christmas break, that winter break, before we get into conference play. This is where everybody's kind of positioning themselves, right? So that when we get into conference play, we know what the strengths of the leagues should be. By the way, it's looking like the Big 12 is going to be pretty strong this year as well. So we'll get some of those thoughts from CJ about the Jayhawks. We'll talk about Darren Peterson and all those things, but also talk about the landscape of college basketball and maybe where Kansas stacks up and what they've got in front of them when Big 12 play comes around. We'll also get his thoughts on North Carolina State. That's a big game coming up for the Kansas Jayhawks this weekend. Speaking of that game, we're going to talk to the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, Brian Hanni. I want to talk to him about what we've seen through that evolution of this Kansas program so far this season. It's a young basketball team with some young stars, but also some newcomers, right? It's a completely overhauled roster from the one that we saw a year ago. Yeah, there's some returners like Flory Badunga, but he almost looks like a reinvented player this year compared to the guy that we saw a year ago. You put in all these other newcomers, there's a different ethos to the team. There's a different feeling to the team. There's a different style to the way they play the game. There's a different vibe in terms of the way that they hang out, the way that they seem to mesh on the court and off the court. And Brian has a really good window into that. So we're going to talk about that with Brian, and we'll preview this matchup against North Carolina State. You might look at them and say, 7-3, they're not ranked in the top 25. This might be an upset for the Jayhawks if they go in to rally and win this game, because both teams, by the way, are 7-3, and North Carolina State have some good players, very balanced on offense. They've got basically 6 guys that are averaging double figures in scoring. So there's not one person you can key on and say, we got to slow this guy down and then we're going to be fine. They can shoot the rock from the outside. And I think that 3-point field goal proficiency for North Carolina State versus the 3-point field goal defensive proficiency of the Jayhawks so far this year is going to be a great contrast in styles for this game. And Brian's been studying it all. He's going to break it all down for us coming up. So those are some of the guests that we have on the show today. I want to remind everybody tomorrow, really going to lean into this volleyball match as well, because this is history in the making. Kansas versus Nebraska in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. We're going to have Jill Hall, former volleyball player at KU and broadcaster currently, who's done some matches for Nebraska this year and a ton of KU, so she can tell us what's going on. So we're going to talk to Jill about this big matchup and get a preview. Also tomorrow, Logan Bell, who was my guest on the Jayhawker podcast. I want to play some of that for you because, man, what a player she is as a freshman, playing in every match so far this year. Get a sense for, can you imagine your first year on campus, you get a game like this against the juggernaut Nebraska. Can Kansas do it for the first time ever? It's all straight ahead. A busy couple of days coming up. We're going to get it started with my guy, BMAC, Brandon McAnderson. We'll talk some college football, some Kansas football as we're underway on a Thursday on Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. And we continue on the Rock Chalk Sports program, courtesy. I'm going to start that over. That was terrible. All right, 3, 2, 1. And we're back with Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. I'm Nate Bukaty filling in for Sean Kellerman this week, and we're going to get back into some college football with the guy that I have known since he was toting the football for a Kansas football team in the Orange Bowl back in the day. Now you hear him patrolling the sidelines, pregame coverage, everything like that for the Jayhawk Radio Network. His name is Brandon McAnderson. We call him BMAC. BMAC, how are you, man?
I'm doing excellent, man. How are you?
Good. You know what? It's always good to hear your voice. It makes me feel my age a little bit every time I turn on, pregame and I'm listening to you break down the games for us. And my wife and I'll hit her, I'll elbow her and jokingly say, I know that guy. And you and I run into each other at the Kansas Nation thing. We had some great conversations off the air about the future of Kansas football. I know how optimistic you are about things. So I thought, well, let's get my guy BMAC on the show and break some of this stuff down. And look, I know it was a disappointing season for Kansas football. I don't think anybody would deny that. So many close calls and games that could have put Kansas in a position where they would have qualified for a bowl game that they had time to prepare for and all those things. And it just didn't quite work out this year. But I do think that you would agree there are still a lot of reasons for optimism about where the program is headed. So I guess when you look back on it, just how would you sum up what you saw through the course of this year for Kansas football?
So I think that, you start at the beginning and you start with Jalen Daniels, who for 7 games was not one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think he was the best quarterback in the nation. 18 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Faced 3 top 25 passing defenses, exceeded completion percentage, exceeded yards. In that Missouri game, he put them in a chance to win without a run game and a defense that was, the total yardage numbers were high, but actually was pretty competitive in that game against a really good rushing attack from Mizzou. You move all the way up to Texas Tech. That's game 7. Watch the second half of Texas Tech. Jalen was terrific. There were moments in the game where they got derailed, the fumble at the beginning of the third quarter, the 3rd and 1 where they got sacked on the play action that extended a 2nd and 1 that ended in essentially a 4th and 10 and a punt. This guy was incredible. And then over the last 5 games of the year, he played 3 of his worst games per QBR. He had one 30-point QBR game in the last 3 seasons. That was last year at Illinois. He had 3 in the last 5 games. So he was a guy that, did as well as he could have. We don't know what he was dealing with. We don't know why he didn't play as well. It certainly wasn't just on him. It was on everyone. But that was one place you could point to where you could see, where the success wasn't as high. The run game was not, you couldn't count on the run game this year. They couldn't consistently run the football, and that always put them behind the sticks, and it always put an extremely heavy load on Jalen. Sometimes he was able to execute and finish, and sometimes he wasn't. And that's the product of not having a run game. And on the defensive side, a lot of young, exciting players emerged. The defensive line pretty much did what you'd expect them to do. But once again, Kansas cannot defend the run. They ended up at 5 yards a carry. Again, they were 82nd in yards per carry, 79th. In yards per game, and they've not been any higher than, they were not 79th this year, they're 118th. The highest they've been under Leipold is 79th. You can't win championships with a rushing defense in the 80s. So it's something that they've got to address, and it's something that was a bugaboo because your defense, it's hard to defend if every 3rd down, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 is a run pass option. There's no predictability in it. So I think there's some structural things that they need to figure out from a football standpoint, but it was a season where you saw some young players on the defensive side show some upside. You saw some offensive players develop, and there's a ton of optimism in this program.
So you listed off, look, at a lot of it comes down to boil down what you just talked about. A lot of it comes down to the run game, ability to run the ball, ability to stop the run. And I think that sometimes people with the new waves of offense, explosive plays and quarterbacks throwing the ball all over the place, we can forget how important winning the line of scrimmage is. And you were obviously a part of such a good running combination with you and Jake Sharp back in those days. And on the defensive side, you guys had some guys that could really stand up to the run. It was which we all remember Todd Reesing and the great wide receivers, but that was a fundamental part to the success of those teams. You also listed the history defensively of Kansas under Lance Leipold. They have struggled to stop the run, but offensively, that's one of the things we really came to know about this team under Lance Leipold so far is the ability to run the football. And I'm just kind of curious what you think went wrong there. Was the offensive line just not up to what they've had in the past? Was a little scheme? Where do you think they can look to improve in that category going into next year?
I think describing what the issues were in the run game are a microcosm of what's been happening in general. I think it's not easy to point to one thing as the primary issue with them running the football. If you look at it, it's a little bit of everything. Last year they were primarily a duo team, which means essentially 3 double teams amongst your offensive line and tight ends, so 6 guys that play those positions. What happens is you end up with a lot of two-way goes. You can go right, you can go left. You know who was brilliant at that? Devin Neal. He was brilliant at it. He could make the first guy miss no matter what happened. So, you could block that play correctly and he could make you right often. If you move over to this type, these backs, they weren't as adept at that running style. And if you watch the first half of the season, it's the primary run play they ran, which was duo. I didn't like it as much because Daniel Highshaw is not a runner that can change pace. That's not how he plays. He's a downhill runner. And when he's decisive, he's impossible to stop. And that's what you saw the last 2 weeks of the season when they went to a little bit more outside zone, a little bit more man counters, a little bit more inside zone. It not only helps your team process through, some of the difficult parts of blocking people, but it also helps young players, because if you remember their offensive line, they had the returners in the middle. You had Kobe Baines and you had Bryce Foster. those were your repeat guys, but pretty much everyone else was new. And what we found out towards the end of the season is that Amir Herring and Calvin Clemens were much better in zone schemes. Because if you look at Calvin Clemens, his size, strength, and ability, he can bend, he can use his athleticism to get leverage points. The same with Amir Herring. They weren't as adept at double teaming and moving guys. So I think it was a combination of things. One being, I'm not sure the run system fit the backs that well. And then two, I'm not sure it fit the offensive line that well. So I think it was something where they were constantly trying to problem solve fit and scheme.
And then back to the defensive side, you mentioned it's been a bugaboo. And when you're playing in a conference like the Big 12, part of it is you're going up against big dudes, right? And teams that have elite players in the trenches. But I really was hopeful and thought that one of the real strengths of this Kansas football team this year was going to be that defensive line. And look, stopping the run isn't all just about the defensive line, right? I understand that, but I'm just kind of curious how surprised you were maybe that the defensive run game wasn't able to take a step forward this year like maybe we thought they would.
I was surprised because if you look across the defensive line, I don't think you're going to find like an extreme underperformer, right? I mean, Dean Miller was injured most of the year, and it kind of showed in his play, kind of showed in his body. He was banged up, and he wasn't the same player that he was the previous season. But if you looked across the board at the other spots, Keenan Caldwell had the best season of his career. Tommy Dunn at the beginning of last year probably had the best moments of his career. He had some good moments here. DJ Withers was always very good. I thought Blake Harrell was a borderline star pretty much all season. So those guys pretty much did what you'd expect them to do. One of the things that was noticeable to me was how multiple they were on defense, how many different things that they did. So you would see the defensive line do the things that you would expect them to do, and they would still be getting gashed. Some of it was, you had a 2 linebacker set, and then suddenly Bengali Kamara was on the edge, and it was just Trey Lathan in the middle. So I thought that there were times where their defense didn't even have a second level because of the way that they were trying to occupy the gaps. And if you watch college football, what they were doing was not unique to what everyone else was doing. It just wasn't working as well, and someone like Bengali was just this incredible athlete. He had this elusiveness to his game at linebacker that actually reminded me of Derek Johnson, the old Chiefs guy. Where he could play in the trenches and make you miss and still be able to hold his own. But at times he got pushed out of his gaps and we really got gashed. So I think it was a combination of things. But my primary concern with the defense was how many different things they were doing. It was hard to peg what they were actually good at. And their best defensive game to me was against Arizona. And Arizona just runs 11 personnel, which is just, 3 wide receivers and a tight end. They don't switch out of that. So Kansas didn't have to switch out of that. They just were able to play it straight up. And I don't think it's a coincidence that was their best game. So I think there was some issues with how multiple they were and how much the kids were actually taking to it, because there were times, specifically Cincinnati, where they were trying to run the clock out at the end of the half. And we got gashed the same way by the same play because they weren't in the right places. So I wondered about their ability to process the defense and execute it when they were so multiple. So those were kind of the things that I saw.
We're visiting with Brandon McAnderson in the wake of KU's 5-win season. That Cincinnati game, boy, that was a tough one. You talk about such a good team and a good game, and they were just a tip ball away from closing that thing out. And games like that in the Arizona game, I think that'll stick probably with KU through the course of the offseason. But as we mentioned, I think the flip side of it, BMAC is, and I've talked to Kansas fans about this. Some would list off the poor record in these close games in the fourth quarters. And my response would be, we went through about a 20-year stretch where we weren't in games in the fourth quarters. And I'm not saying that's a finish line, but that is still an element of progress in terms of competitiveness that has me thinking this team is not that far off from winning 7-8 games and being in a good bowl game and all those things. But one of the big questions will be the quarterback situation next year, because for the first time in what is it, 7 years? Mm-hmm. It's going to be somebody other than Jalen Daniels. I know that Daniels, when he was hurt, we had other people come in, but it's going to be somebody else's job next year. We know there's a couple guys in the system that have already gotten some reps at the quarterback position. How would you paint that picture for us in terms of what goes into the spring and all those things as we get ready for next season?
So what I would paint the picture as is you have a viable option in Cole Ballard, a guy that came in as a walk-on true freshman and played about as well as you could expect against Kansas State, gave him a chance to win that game, played about as well as you could expect against Texas Tech in the half that he played before that, gave him a chance to win that game. That's a pretty good resume for a young player, regardless of how you feel about his talent. Then you move on to Zeke Marshall, who the explosiveness, the personality, I can't unsee what he did in that Michigan State championship against Underwood, the starting quarterback for Michigan. He just completely outplayed him with less players, and he was just a dog the entire time. And I think that programs they take the personality of the quarterback, and that is a personality I want playing for the Kansas Jayhawks. So I'm excited about that guy as well. McCombs is a big, physical, strong, athletic quarterback. I think he has a super bright future. And one of my favorite things about the team in general is you could go to a practice and watch all 4 quarterbacks, 5 quarterbacks, everyone. They'll be in live periods getting to checkdowns. They'll be in live periods taking what the defense gives them. That's uncommon. What that tells me is Coach Zabrowski coaches a position extremely well. So I'm excited about the 3 options that we have. There could be a Jason Bean situation where you bring in a guy that's been a part-time starter, but it's not that expensive in the portal, because that's what Kansas really has to start to think about. It's not some of these things, these conversations sound like they're about Jalen Daniels, and they kind of aren't. Because if you think about it, like his development and what he was amazing, right? I love watching the guy play. He played with so much joy. He did things that, at times that I can't remember seeing a Kansas quarterback do. But we ended up investing a lot of money in him as a player to keep him on the roster. And we won 5 games, and we really didn't beat anyone we weren't supposed to beat. That's not a reflection of JD, but what it is a reflection of is roster building. Roster building is not what it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. Every year, a coach has to make an evaluation. Where should they spend their money? And if you look at it, Texas Tech spent all of their money on the defensive line, and they will be in the playoffs, right? They used a quarterback that they already had. I'm sure he got paid, but they didn't go out in the portal and get a guy. They didn't go. You got to start thinking about it like NFL. Is this a season where you go through and you just go with what you have on the roster? Do you get a free agent? Do you get all these things are at play, and they're at stake in a different way. For where Kansas football is right now, I want to see them move forward with the 3 quarterbacks they have, maybe get a 4th guy that's had some playing experience and keep it moving, because there are more pressing needs for this football team to address.
I mean, it's such a good point, B-Mac, because we spend so much time when we discuss the NFL talking about salary cap and how much money are you willing to commit to one player, because that means then you lose that ability to spend that money on another player. Now, the difference in the NFL is everybody's dealing with the same salary cap.
Right.
College football, every school has their own salary cap, and that's whatever the budget is that you have set forth for players. But no matter what your budget is, you do have a budget. That means you got to decide how much of our money are we going to put into the defensive line? How much money are we going to put into keeping the players that we have versus bringing other players in? I don't envy college coaches for what they've got to sort through and how they make those decisions going forward. I do know there's a lot of excitement about the class that Lance Leipold is bringing in. And he has, to this point, chosen to really try to keep players around so that they can develop them in the system. When you look at the way he's brought in, especially the high school players, what excites you the most about that approach right now?
What I love about them is their physical development is, to me, the best in the Big 12. What I see is, so Kansas, from a high school perspective, doesn't have these super advanced programs. They don't have spring football. They don't have specific strength coaches and these big time weight rooms and programs. They don't have that. What that means is that their ceiling to grow as football players is really high. I was a really good high school football player at Lawrence High School. I was much better in college because I didn't have the developmental opportunities that I had in college. So what you're going to see is, you're seeing it already. Guys like John Kamara, who's been here for 18 months, was a redshirt freshman, played some off-ball linebacker. Look at his physical development. I mean, look at his size, physicality, speed, and then go around and look across the board. Leroy Harris, same thing. Jalen Todd, same thing. Even a guy like Mason Ellis, another Kansas recruit. So what you're seeing is that their physical development is incredible. They're able to get guys to their physical potential within 12 and 18 months. And Nate, it was not like that when I was in college. It used to take 18 months to put the weight on, then another 18 months to turn it into good weight, and then another 18 months to figure out what kind of player you are. But the benefit of having someone like Coach Gildersleeve running your strength program is that you can go about building players in a different way. And I like what they're doing from the building player standpoint. But if you go back to what Coach Leipold said at the end of the season was, we got to coach football better. We got to execute football better. And I think that is the natural next step for the team. Because you talked about, we've been hyper-focused on player retention. We've been like, we're not losing anybody in the transfer portal, and that's awesome. And it is awesome, right? It is good that we get to know the players and they get to develop underneath here. But let's not forget, Arizona State didn't have any players 3 years ago, and they went to the playoffs last year. Arizona didn't have any players 2 years ago, and they won 9 games this year. So I think we need to think about the transfer portal differently, and that we're looking at it as this objectively negative thing, but we need to be looking at it as a roster building mechanism, as a tool, because so much of college football in evaluation is lost in nostalgia. But this needs to be a designated approach, a crafted approach to build and develop your roster. And I think what Kansas does best is physically develop players. And when they get a ton of Kansas recruits, the upside is incredible. Tyron Parker, all these guys are going to come in here and have such major physical improvements that their opportunities to reach their football potential are very high.
I'll tell you what, B-Mac, as I'm approaching 50 years old, I can tell you I can put on 10 pounds overnight. I just look at a donut and I put on weight these days. So it's a little different, I think, for the college kids and their metabolism. They got to really work at it. And the good weight, that's what, I'm good at putting on the bad weight at this point in my life.
Right.
Maybe not the good weight. I'll tell you what, one more question about this year's team and where they go into the offseason. And then if you got time, we'll take a break and talk a little bit about the playoff and the bowl system. I just want to get your thoughts on this ever-shifting landscape. But as it comes to the Jayhawks now, when you look at where they go in this offseason, you mentioned the transfer portal. How active do you expect them to be? And what are some of the things you maybe think that they want to look to add, to try to get back on track for next year?
So I think one of the big question marks for them is going to be safety. I thought this year that was a position that really struggled collectively with some players inside of the program that have been here for a while, but not like from a talent perspective, right? Because, Lyric Rawls would have games where he was one of the best players in the defense. He could play that over the two, knock the ball away, and there's a good chance he'll be back. So I think they'll try to retain him. And his physicality. I don't know how active they'll be, but I do think they need someone there that has shown the ability to consistently play the position. I just would like to see them add a body or a type of talent that they don't have to kind of mix things up there. I think they're going to stay the course because that's what they do. I mean, if you look at their track record together, going back to Buffalo, they just stay the course and they demand more of themselves and they improve. And we've gotten no indication that that's not going to continue. So I think they'll be moderately aggressive in the transfer portal. I think they'll look for starts because if you look at what Arizona did, Arizona was a team, they were ready to write that coach off. They're ready to write that program off. And they went in the transfer portal and rebuilt their defense. And they were top 5 in passing defense, and they were top 5 in rushing defense almost because you couldn't pass on them. So they were able to kind of build a really good defense, and they didn't do it by spending the most amount of money. They did it by finding starts. They went out into the portal and got people that have started at other places, and that's what they used to build their defense. So there might be some symmetry there for Kansas to find some starts to throw in the mix to compete with some of the talent that we already have on the roster.
You make a really good point. If you can get to the quarterback without having to blitz, and you can then stack the box for the run and leave guys in man-on-man coverage because you're going to get home, that can help you stop the run right there as well. There's no doubt about it. So there's more than one way to approach things, and we'll see where Kansas goes this offseason. B-Mac, you got time for one more segment with me so we can talk a little about the playoffs and everything?
Man, it's Nate Bukaty. We can go all day.
Let's go. That's what I want to hear.
Nate Bukaty calls me. I just lock off the whole day.
Hey, you know what? I got that kind of clout. There's no doubt about it. All right, we'll take a break. We're going to talk about the playoffs. We'll talk about this bowl situation as well. We got Brandon McAnderson with us. This is Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. All right, I'm going to Is your connection okay? Like, are you able to see me okay?
Yeah.
And am I breaking up on you a lot, B-Mac?
No.
Okay. It's breaking up a ton on my end.
So it's going to be good. It's going to be, I was going to ask B-Mac, could you stay until we like in recording and like, so it like processes and like when it processes, it doesn't have any cuts or lags in the stream. Is that what?
Yeah, I'll just ask Nate about Ruben Amorim, and we'll just talk some Man U. So while you guys are finishing.
Man.
Okay.
Awesome. Are you want to do that after we're done with the second segment? Easton, you're going to stop recording then, and then you need to hang on. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, are you a Man U guy? I can't remember. Is that
yeah, I'm a Man U guy.
I actually have been. I'm an Arsenal guy, but I've supported.
Ew.
I think they should. I've said all along last year when he was losing, I'm like, you got to stick with him. You gave the guy the opportunity to rebuild the team. If you just keep, I always make this analogy. There's a difference between motion and progress. This is motion, but it's not progress. You're just going back. You're just going in a circle.
Yep.
You got to stick with something long enough to see if it works. And I think he's actually a good coach, and they've got a lot of issues.
It reminds me of Cowboys and Schottenheimer. Where the guy can coach, let him coach, let him build the team in his image, let him build an offense in his image. And now you're starting to see this can work, this playing this long ball, this, getting a goalie that fits the system he wants to play and getting some more connectivity, more fun, a little bit more ingenuity. I like the team this year.
Yeah. And you know what, I know he ran off some good players. But sometimes that's what you got to do too, because you got to set your culture. If if guys aren't bought in, if they don't fit your system, and sometimes, hey, I know you're going to be good somewhere else, but it's not going to be here. I think like you don't this as much as anybody, and I've seen. Hang on a second. I'm gonna see if this. Okay. Yeah. You still got me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I've seen good and bad coaches. I've seen good programs and bad programs. If you don't get the culture right, none of the rest of it matters, in my opinion. You can have all the great players and all that, and you only get one chance to set that culture. If you come in and you don't set the culture and then you try to later, the toothpaste is already out of the tube. You have to set that tone right away. And I think Amorim did that, I think it started to show too. Top 6 is up for grabs for about 15 teams in the Premier League right now.
We're sitting right there. We're sitting at 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, how many points are separating like 3rd place through 12th? It's something
Not
like,
much. No,
I
think we dropped the 8th on a draw. We dropped the 8th on a draw, so yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, I'll get this. We can talk about it again when he's saving things here in a second. Okay, here we go in 3, 2, 1. And we're back with Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. Nate Bukaty with you, filling in for Sean Kellerman. We got Brandon McAnderson, the one and only. We talked a little English Premier League during the break. We're going to spare you that talk on this show unless we decide to get into it a little bit later. B-Mac, I want to talk to you about the playoff system. And every time there's a selection now, there's controversy, there's opinions. And I'm curious right off the bat, if you had any issues with the teams that got in or teams that didn't get in, anything that stood out to you massively that had you hot and bothered? I would say nothing stood out to me massively. I don't know how interesting any of these conversations are. And that's where I'll leave it, because a lot of it is about preseason rankings, and preseason rankings aren't real. So then you have to roll into a season based on expectations of a team that had not played a football game. So after the first week, I always look at the Florida State-Alabama thing. Florida State waxes Alabama. Does that mean Florida State's a bad team or a good team? I don't know. They beat Alabama, and that should matter. And the problem that I have with the process is everybody is appealing to sympathy, and everybody is asking for inclusion, and everybody is asking for arbitrary reward, and see it through our eyes. And I don't know when sports became that, but it's a no thank you for me. If you lost 3 games, you're out. If you lose to Florida State, you're out. If you play in the conference championship game and you have 2 losses and now you have 3, you're out. because that's what happens in football. Think about the NFL. The NFL this year, let's go with the AFC South. They have 3 really good teams. Now, if Daniel Jones was healthy, they'd have 3 really good teams, and one of those teams would miss the playoffs. Imagine DeMeco Ryans going up to the press conference and saying, we have the number 1 defense. We have CJ Stroud. I mean, look how hard we had to go to Kansas City and win. You know how hard that is? And it's like, when did we start acting like this about football? Like, when did sports, the thing that we are constantly talking about, oh, this generation. Well, a lot of these men that are currently in this generation sound a lot like the generation they were criticizing, because every chance you get, there is a man on TV complaining about not understanding their real circumstances. But listen here, there's 19 teams, 126 Division I teams, and there's 12 that make the playoffs. And it is unrealistic for half of those teams to come from the same conference. And if you really wanted to fix it all together, the thing that is most obvious to me is the thing that would fix all of these conversations is a schedule czar. I don't even think it would be that complicated. It used to be that scheduling was based on regional recruiting. And well, that's not a thing anymore. Regional recruiting is not a thing. It used to be, well, I want to play in California because I have a recruiting base down in LA. That's not a thing anymore. So why are SEC teams late in the season playing New Mexico State? Why is Ole Miss playing Washington State? I think that's the outcome that sticks out the most to me. Is between how someone like BYU is viewed versus how other SEC teams are viewed. Do I think BYU is as good as Oklahoma? I don't. Do I think BYU is as good as Ole Miss? I don't. However, BYU's results are being used against them in a different way. So if BYU plays a game and they barely win, then it's like, well, I don't think BYU is that good. Oklahoma won 3 games. They scored 17 points. So, I mean, I don't know how good they are. Ole Miss hosted Washington State for an 11 o'clock game at home and won by 4. So that would be something that they would use against BYU to say that maybe BYU is not quite as good. So there's a certain kind of bias that exists in all the conversations that I do feel like scheduling would address. If it were the top 5 teams from the SEC were playing the top 5 teams from the Big Ten from the previous season in order, who has an issue with that, right? Like if you have 3 opportunities to play other conference teams, match up with someone that was at a similar level than you as last year. And it's frustrating because as a Kansas basketball fan, Kansas is in that position in basketball. They are one of the juggernauts. They are one of the top teams. They don't spend their time scheduling teams where they don't know about their team. They play everybody they possibly can because they know that this win-loss record is less important than what the team becomes. So I would like to see a whole lot less complaining, and I would like to see a whole lot less default to maybe we won't schedule now. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to this room and convince this guy that what we do here, we are the toughest team, we are the hardest fighting team, and we're going to fight to the end, except when we have to go on the road and play another major conference team. Let's not do that. Let's not jeopardize ourselves. I think this is football, and I think everybody needs to play everybody and get over it.
So much to unpack there, B-Mac, and your analogy to the NFL. Could you imagine a coach that's in a 4-way tie that loses the tiebreakers complaining about, not getting picked for the playoffs? In the NFL, it hits home, but there's a fundamental difference. And I think this is what we get back to is, what the criteria are in the NFL for qualifying for the playoffs. There's a tiebreaker system in place. There's a ranking system. If it goes by your record in the conference, it goes by your record in the division. We can spell it out mathematically. In college football, it's a moving target. It's this nebulous thing. We judge BYU based on one set of criteria, and then we judge Notre Dame based on a different set of criteria. Head-to-head matters over here. Where you played in your conference championship game and how you performed in it matters over here, right? And so it leaves this room for everybody to say that they didn't get judged fairly. And I think that's what makes it tough. And I'm with you. And I'll give you one that I think is something that people aren't even talking about enough, and that is Duke. And far be it from me, B-Mac, to ever what's the word? Advocate for Duke. as a Kansas fan, but they won their conference. They won one of the big four conferences. And you can say, well, they weren't the best team in the conference. Well, they were the champs. So either the way you settle your championship is wrong in that conference, or you're not valuing what it means to be a champion enough. To me, if you win one of the big four conferences, that should be an automatic berth in the postseason. And here we see Duke win their conference, and they're not involved in this, and nobody even seems to want to talk about them. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that the one of the big differences is between understanding the parameters for what qualify you as a playoff team is absolutely true. And the structure is more simple because there's less teams. But the thing that they don't have is CBS and Fox aren't fighting for the right to determine who should be in the game based on their own profitability. So since there is no leadership in college football, everyone is doing what's best for themselves. So I love when Brett Yormark talked about how he did not like the Notre Dame AD's comments, because it is literally affecting the integrity of the game that you play. Notre Dame pulling out of a bowl game is literally affecting the integrity of the whole system, and it's completely self-serving, especially considering they have contracts written allegedly where if they're in the top 12, they make the playoffs anyway because they don't have a conference and because they have TV. And what about their TV partners? Who cares about TV partners? I mean, how has this become the thing that is the decision-making mechanism for a championship? How is this different than the AP picking Oklahoma to be number one over USC? Are we certain that the way that we were doing things before is broken, right? So now every time you switch and make a decision, your set of decisions has a new set of problems. And instead of complaining about the problems, come up with a leadership coalition that makes sense. Why do the conferences need the NCAA? No one's ever told me this. I have not figured it out. Why can't the conferences come together to build their own governing body? Why can't TV fight for what's available as opposed to determining what's right? Those are two different concepts. When you look at the NBA contract that they just rewrote, they lost TNT. They had Prime jump in. They had all these, we want this part of the game. We want this part of the season. We want this part of the season. Cool. They get to bid. They get to decide. They don't get to decide who wins and who doesn't. They don't get to decide who's favored and who isn't. They don't get to decide where all the attention in the sport goes. So I think what needs to happen is leadership needs to come into play here and stop looking for antitrust exceptions, which is what the NCAA is going to do. And then these university presidents and conference alignments stop looking to the NCAA for guidance, because they have shown you what their guidance is going to be. We need your help. And then the conferences say, we need your help. What we really need is somebody to lead.
B-Mac, I'm gonna give our audience a little bit of a history lesson here while we're talking about this, because it's very relevant to the conversation we're having. I've been working on a project that involves the World Cup coming to Kansas City. I don't know if you heard, it's happening next summer.
Really?
But as a part of that process, I started researching Lamar Hunt and the role that he played in bringing both footballs to Kansas City. Obviously, he brought the Kansas City Chiefs from the Dallas Texans to Kansas City, and that led to bringing the Wizards to Kansas City and the World Cup now. So he's obviously been, you could argue, the most influential sports figure in the history of America. I mean, he's up there. And one of the reasons I would say that is, and it ties right into what we're talking about, what I didn't realize until I started really researching Lamar Hunt is that his role as founder of the AFL was even more important to him than his role as owner of the Dallas Texans / Kansas City Chiefs. And I used to hear kernels of why that, of this reality from people like Marty Schottenheimer when he would, and Herm Edwards would talk about why the Raiders game mattered so much for the Chiefs. I know you're a Raiders fan, but for Lamar Hunt, he had ownership of the entire league. This league was his idea, right? The AFL was something that he came up with on his own because the NFL wouldn't let him into the club. And so he went and called Bud Adams and all his buddies and said, hey, let's start our own league. So the health of the league itself was a bigger priority to him than the health of his own team. And if you study the history of Lamar Hunt, you can see memorandums, emails, and decisions that were made that were detrimental to his own team for the betterment of the league, because he wanted the league to survive and thrive. And that is what led to an NFL structure that we have now, right? Where everybody shares the revenue equally, where the health of the NFL is more important than the health of your own team. And you have some owners like maybe a Jerry Jones or Al Davis back in the day who fought against that to push the league forward. But overall, you end up with a system where every market in the NFL has a legitimate chance to compete. And if you're not competing in the NFL, you don't get to blame the league for the setup. It's on you, because everybody's got the same resources. Everybody's got the same support. And when you start to look at sports on a professional level, that really is what set the tone for it. You don't have anybody like that in college athletics, especially not in college football. You've got conferences acting in their own best interest to the detriment of the overall sport, right? Gobbling up all the best teams, keeping the revenue. You've got Notre Dame saying, well, we're not going to join a league. We've got our own television contract. We don't have to share that money with anybody. Does that make college football better? No, but that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in their own benefit. And so when you have all these different factions that are not acting for the greater good and making decisions in their own best interest, and then then squabbling over who's going to get the table scraps, right? This is what you're left with. And I'm wondering, like, how do we get to a point where there's a Lamar Hunt, where there's somebody at the top that convinces everybody else we've got to do this together? That's a long rant, isn't it? But do you see where I'm coming from, B-Mac, in the fact that that is the biggest thing that is missing to me from college football? And they made a lot of progress with this playoff. It's better than it used to be. But when you have an SEC that's not really interested in fairness for the rest of the country, right? They're saying they want half their conference in this playoff. This is what we end up with. What do you think?
Well, I think it's I'm glad you brought up Lamar Hunt, because you can't really talk about Lamar Hunt and not talk about Al Davis. So it wasn't just about one guy. It was about multiple guys, and it was about multiple guys doing it in multiple different ways. A lot of times in our modern society, what we have determined leadership is someone telling us what to do. But if you think about the way that things really work, it's about us using our collective leadership abilities to compensate for one another and lead the whole group forward. And when we say there's not those people, I think there are those people. I think anyone that has talked to Travis Goff for more than 15 minutes knows he can definitely be one of those people. He's got every skill and understanding necessary. So there's got to be 15, 20 Travis Goffs. What I think we got to do is move away from the history of college football. And to do so, you have to accept the ugly parts. And there are a lot of ugly parts relative to injury, relative to compensation, relative to the way people are being treated. So then when someone makes a business decision that is best for their family, we discuss morality 24/7. Where else do we do that? I mean, what other sport is a constant discussion of morality being had every time someone makes a decision? So this is the thing. These are the things that I struggle with. Nick Saban goes to the NFL, it isn't the way he wanted to be, and it's different than college. And he bolts as soon as the season's over. And there is this nonstop talk about, is this fair? What is he doing? How does this work? And then he's on TV defending someone else in a similar scenario. And I think what we need to accept is that this is a business. And there are going to be decisions that affect people from a business standpoint. And what you realize is that every person with a name on the back of their jersey is now also a business. So we need to move away from this idea that morality and nostalgia are the most important things about college athletics. They are not. The things that you love about college athletics are your nostalgia. That's not the same thing. That's your nostalgia. That's what you love about it. I'm nostalgic in different ways, but that doesn't mean that matters. What we need to do is come up with the best way to conduct the sport where everybody wins. And there are so many ways to do this, and they already exist. What it's going to take to tap into these resources that literally already exist is to move away from ego, is to move away from the idea that protecting nostalgia has actual value to the longevity of college football. It does not. Protecting nostalgia does not have benefits to long-term college football. It just doesn't.
So, hey, get me choked up talking about this, B-Mac. That does tie into this. Look, Kansas is one of them. I do think we can talk about the fact that it's different circumstances. Kansas was already into a plan for not playing in a bowl game because of their record when this opportunity came. But there are, 8 schools that have declined bowl invitations now? What do you think this means for the future of these bowl games, maybe especially the lower tier bowl games?
So to me, what this means, if you are a business entity, these bowl games are their own individual business entities. Are they going to sit on the sidelines and let things happen around them that they don't understand? What kind of ways can these bowl games bring more value to the student athletes that are participating? What kind of things can they do to make them more fun? What kind of things that can they do to enrich the sport? Because right now, it's another example of everybody looking at the worst part of it and saying, oh, we're doomed. Okay. I mean, if that's the story, we're doomed, right? I just don't believe that. And when I see, Kansas choosing not to play in this game, there are a lot of legitimate reasons to not play in this game that were different than they were 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Presented with the same question next year, Kansas might have a different response. But what you're looking at is when the offseason starts, it isn't like, oh, these kids are going to go do their finals, go on home, and then they'll be back for winter break on January 12th. That's over. That's over. That's not what's happening when the season ends. People are starting to evaluate what's their best opportunity next. And that doesn't mean that everyone's best opportunity is at the same place doing the same thing. So if we're going to be realistic about what goes into a college football offseason, it is something different than what used to go into a college football offseason. So why can't we have contracts that are multiple years? You tell me. It seems like they're the same problems, right? It's injury risk. They don't want to take it. They don't want to take on injury risk. They don't want to collective bargain with the athletes. Where are athletic advocacy groups popping up at? Because I know that athletes have agents now. I know they have agents that represent them. Who is advocating for their long-term health and well-being? You saw the defensive end, I'm keeping it local, the defensive end from Missouri who transferred from Georgia, who Georgia is suing for a contract provision. Is that how we want to do this? Right? What happened to the nostalgia? What happened to the kid following his dreams? Right? Is it dollars? Is it nostalgia? Is it personality? Do we care about the kids? Where's the advocacy group? Who's advocating for athletes? Who's negotiating on their behalf? What say do they have in these rooms? Who's sitting in that room speaking for them? There is no room and there's nobody speaking for them. So if we're talking about all the solutions that go into this, there are 100 models that already exist in the world that they could choose that they do not choose. And there's a bunch of reasons why. And you pick which one feels the best to you. But there are solutions to this thing. This thing is not broken. The solution is just something that will inconvenience people, and they don't want to be inconvenienced.
Well, B-Mac, I tell you what, I hope it wasn't an inconvenience for you to join me on the show today because this has been great stuff, man. I always appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate you having me, bro.
That is Brandon McAnderson, and we'll be back with more Rock Chalk Sports here on Kansas Nation.
Crown Toyota and Crown Volkswagen, getting you where you need to go, celebrating over 30 years and honored by Best of Lawrence. Visit crownautomotive.com and explore the latest models, check out specials, schedule expert maintenance, body shop, and repair services, all with ease. Experience the Crown difference. Miles Snares Crown Automotive, 3400 South Iowa, Lawrence, Kansas. Supporting Kansas athletics.
Kick off your holiday season with a festive walk through the lights at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. The Luminary Walk is celebrating 26 years of bringing holiday magic to the community, proudly presented by FNBO, Westlake Ace Hardware, Saren Energy Solutions, and WeLightKC.com. Wander through glowing gnome and fairy villages, candlelit winter woods, live music, and thousands of electric lights. Tickets available today at opabg.org.
Listen up, guys. A new year is coming, and you deserve to feel your absolute best. Whether you're chasing peak performance, trying to reignite intimacy, or simply want to feel your best, Game Day Men's Health Lawrence is your calling. Situated in a plush man cave setting, their services for testosterone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, vitamin therapy, and weight loss are sure to give you the boost you need. Make an online appointment today by searching for Game Day Men's Health Lawrence. Step up your game in 2025 with Game Day.
Transform your home into a serene oasis with a pro-built pool and patio sunroom. Their expertly crafted sunrooms offer breathtaking views, natural light, and year-round comfort. Whether you're relaxing, entertaining, or simply enjoying the beauty of nature, their sunrooms are the perfect addition to your home. Visit them at 4708 Northwest Gateway Avenue in Riverside to see their stunning selection. Pro-built pool and patio, where your dream living space comes to life.
Hey Kansas City, Ochai Baji here. When I keep up with my Oak Park Northmen, there's only one place I go. 810 Varsity and 810varsity.com.
Scores, features, rankings, predictions, and playoff brackets. Watch games online and, of course, the best social media coverage from Lawrence to Lee Summit, Lenexa to Liberty. Plus, the region's biggest events with college combines, basketball showcases, and more. All at one place. And I'll let Ochai tell you again.
Check it out now. Kansas City's home for high school sports, 810varsity.com.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays from Family Leisure. Come to Family Leisure so we can make your holiday shopping easy. We are your one-stop shop for incredible deals on hot tubs, arcade games, theater seats, grills, massage chairs, and much more in stock and ready to go. Come in for your Chiefs fan to see our inventory of Chiefs clocks, banners, and area rugs. Decorate your game room with our dartboards, gaming chairs, pool, and shuffleboard tables. Mention A10 and save more at Family Leisure, K10 and Ridgeview in Olathe.
What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out kansasnation.com. What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out kansasnation.com.
All right, welcome back to Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. Once again, I'm Nate Bukaty filling in for Sean Kellerman. This has been a fun week for me. For one reason, I'm getting a chance to connect with all kinds of good friends that I don't get to see as often these days. We had Brandon McAnderson on the show earlier talking some college football. And now another one of those guys. I don't know if he'll accept it, but I consider him a friend and somebody that I admire quite a bit for his work in college basketball with the Athletic. CJ Moore joins us now. CJ, how are you, man? What's going on?
I'm doing great, Nate. Thanks for we're buddies. I'll take it.
Okay, you'll take it publicly. All right. You know, some people want to distance themselves from that. I don't blame them.
Don't make me regret it.
Hey, listen, I've had my mistakes in the past. You know, we'll see. Hey, let's talk some college basketball. It's an ever-shifting landscape. I remember seeing you at the Big 12 Media Days a year ago and talking about how hard it is to get your finger on any team in the country now, because you look at a roster and you're going to see 4 newcomers in the starting lineup that have played at 3 different schools before they even got to the one that they're at. So how do you know what anybody has coming into the season? So we're starting to get to a little bit of a sense, right? Of where teams are. And I guess I'm going to start with the Kansas Jayhawks for you, because boy, there's a roster overhaul there. There's an overhaul in the style of play, I think in the mentality and all those things. Maybe give me a thumbnail on what maybe you thought of Kansas coming into the season and what you think of them now that we're getting closer now to conference play.
Obviously, you didn't see the Darren Peterson being out for this amount of time coming into the year, but I think what I saw of them Sunday is kind of similar to what I thought they could be. I think they're anywhere from a top, anywhere from 8 to 20 in the pecking order of things. I had him somewhere in that range in the preseason. He's obviously a really, really fantastic talent, and I think going to be really good going forward. And you just kind of got a little sampling of it the other day. But I actually think, there's a few guys that are playing better than you maybe thought they would be. I know meeting with Self last spring, he was excited about Bryson Tiller and, kind of talking about the Morris twins when it came to him. And I think this little window here where Darren Peterson has been out has been good for Bryson, because it's given him more opportunities to do more things, to get on the floor more, to maybe have a little bit longer leash when he makes mistakes. Trey White has been better than I thought he'd be a really, really, really good glue guy and just be a guy that, kind of cutter, spot up shooter, not do a whole ton on offensively, but be, maybe a 9 to 10 points per game guy, kind of like he was at Illinois last year. I thought he could really play the role he played at Illinois last year, but, he's shown he can do maybe a little bit more. And now you're feeling really good about that secondary third scorer or whatever you want to put him, if you want to put Flory, above him. So I think the pieces are kind of fitting into place. I think the biggest thing with this roster, I'm actually working on something right now on Kentucky. And like my biggest critique for that team is like Mark Pope built a roster that didn't really fit him and fit how he likes to coach. And I think the last couple of years is you can maybe have a similar critique to Bill Self, and the roster didn't really fit him. Like they still did okay because he's a really good coach and they figured it out. And, you know, while it was down years for KU, they weren't that far down. I think this team, guys like a Melvin Council, like they just more the grittiness, they just more fit him. And so I think they have a chance to be really good defensively. I don't know that they're there yet, but like I think they have a chance to be a really good defensive team and kind of just win games in those. You know, Self always say there's going to be so many games where you don't play as well as you can play and you got to figure out a way to win those games, right? Like this is the kind of team, like you saw the Tennessee game, some of those Syracuse game, like these are they can kind of grind out those wins. And then with a top level talent like Darren Peterson, like the last couple of years, they didn't have pros on the team. They didn't have NBA players, and he is truly an NBA player. And then you've got a couple other guys that might get there eventually, like Bryson Tiller, Flory. So I just think it's going to be a team that like Kansas fans, I think, are already experiencing. Like they just, you know, besides the frustration of Peterson in and out, yada, yada, yada. I know people have been frustrated with that, but I think it's a team they can like more get behind and like, man, we really enjoy watching these guys fight.
Man, I love that analysis and what you said about the roster not fitting the last couple of years. That would explain some things, because to me, that's one of the things as a Kansas fan watching. I was watching a basketball team that just didn't – I'd never seen a Kansas Bill Self team do some of the things that we had seen, especially last year. And this year's team, I do think, looks much more like a Kansas basketball team in terms of just the spirit that they play with, some of that scrappiness, the rim protection that you see from Badunga this year. And maybe we should go there for a second, because that's a player, and it's kind of interesting because he didn't have a dominant performance in the Missouri game, but he had his moments defensively and down the stretch where I thought he really showed that rim protection that Bill Self usually seems to have had during his time. When you look at the progression that he's made from freshman year to this year, I mean, how would you sum that up?
I think there's a confidence and a comfort level that he's playing with that last year was just kind of like, whoa, I'm out there. like, what do I do? What play are we running? Do I really know all the plays?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And this year, it's just like he knows he belongs. And he's not the kind of guy that you want to throw it to in the post 20 times and be like, go get us buckets. Like Graham Ike, for instance, at Gonzaga, like you can just throw that guy the ball a bunch of times and like he's going to score at a pretty efficient rate because he's really, really skilled. Like I think Flory, we've seen at times like he can struggle maybe scoring a little bit over length and that kind of stuff. But like I think eventually when he gets when him and Darren Peterson like get a comfort playing together, like he can be a terrific pick and roll player because he can really get out of a screen and roll the basket really quickly. And like, you know, you're seeing it with the lobs. So like, I think there was one from Council the other day, and with Council's speed, like getting into the paint, like he's going to benefit from playing with those guys where like last year they didn't really have guards that could get downhill and get paint. You know, Harris was maybe could at times, but like people didn't respect his jumper, so they could just cheat off of him. So like the roster also fits more around him. But the biggest thing is just going from a freshman to a sophomore and just the comfort and confidence that comes with that.
So you referenced Tiller benefiting from Peterson's absence. What about the collective? You know, playing some of those big games that they did, winning some, losing some. How much in the long run, assuming Peterson's injuries problems are behind him and that he starts to develop and become more of that consistent star player, how much does the rest of the team benefit? Maybe even if you didn't want that situation, of learning how to play without him while he was gone.
I think it benefits because one, you know, he can't play 40 minutes a game. So it gives, you know, we can survive for 5-minute stretches if we have to without him, obviously. And then, you know, it gave guys opportunities that like was trying to think here real quick. Names are flying out of my head. Jamar McDowell, for instance. Like, if Darren Peterson is out there and he's healthy the whole time, does Jamar McDowell ever get on the floor other than like a minute or two at a time?
Marco Jackson has a couple breakout type moments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Marco Jackson, like, gave guys some confidence and opportunities that they probably wouldn't have gotten before. And now it gives Self a little more confidence to, put those guys on the floor. So while this rotation is going to tighten, like this conference play gets here, just because it almost already has. Like the other night, he didn't play a lot. And like the one guy that's probably hurt a little bit is I do think Cole Rosario really fit with Darren Peterson because you wanted to give him floor spacing. I think he had a terrific preseason and summer and was really making shots at a high level. And the fact that he hasn't shot it well so far, that's maybe the one guy that it's hurt where like he would have gotten pretty good opportunities with Darren out there on the floor. And maybe he could have shot through his struggles so far. And he really, hasn't been able to do that. So, but other than that, I think some of those other guys, it gave them confidence. And then it also forced them into hey, we've got to win ugly. We've got to really guard type mentality that like starts early. Cause like, I do think for this team to reach all of its goals, it has to be elite on the defensive end. And like you go back and watch that North Carolina game. There are a lot of defensive mistakes and just like they're not at the level that they had to be defensively. It was early, it was the second game of the year. But I think that it created that kind of mentality that could serve them well down the road.
Yeah, they had a couple of defensive breakdowns down the stretch in the UConn game. In most of the game, they were so scrappy and good defensively. That's what kept them in the game when they were struggling offensively. And that does bring me, because when you talk about elite, they are not an elite shooting team. I do feel like, and you tell me if I'm wrong, when I watch them, and like a guy like Rosario, I think is a good example, I see a good shooter in there somewhere, but he's not hitting shots right now. And maybe that's a confidence thing. Maybe that's the game being a little sped up right now. And once the game slows down, we've seen that with players before. When they go up to the level of college, it takes them a little while to get their feet underneath them. But even then, I don't see this, again, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't see this being an elite shooting team. I think you hope they get good enough that they can hit the open shots when they need to. But that's not what they're going to hang their hat on. So if it's not that, it goes back to your point, right? They've got to be elite defensively, because in today's basketball, it's a shot maker's game a lot of times, right? You don't have as much room for error if you're not going to shoot the lights out.
Yeah, and there's, I'm working on a story right now where like teams are sizing up. There's so much more length on the court than there used to be. Some teams like Michigan, for instance, who's just murdering everybody right now. They play three bigs and they're getting away with it. Like it's hard to score in the paint. Like scoring at the rim is probably maybe the most important thing in college, the ability to do that. And when you don't have the shooters that are respected enough to at least give you some of that space, it gets hard. So there are games where it could maybe look ugly because of that. But the difference with this team and last year, like, okay, Tiller, while he hasn't shot it great since like the beginning of the year, people at least respect him out there. Right? They're going to think twice before giving him a wide open shot. Trey White is pretty good at knocking down open jumpers. Obviously Council, it's not great, but like every once in a while, if he's wide open, maybe he can make one. And then Peterson, like you have to be on him and attached to him at all times. And that's going to create opportunities for other guys. Like, you put him on the same side as Council and you let Council just drive because there's space there. So I do think this team has a lot more space to work with, even though the shooting's like maybe not a ton better. There's more guys that are at least a threat.
We're visiting with CJ Moore. The Jayhawks have another interesting away game against North Carolina State coming up this weekend. I'm looking at their roster. They got 5 guys that average double figures. They were ranked in the top 25 until they dropped a couple of games to pretty big name opponents. It's just like everybody else. 4 of their guys, I think, are transfers, first-year guys with North Carolina State. One of them transferring from North Carolina. What a world we're living in right now, CJ. But it's an away game for KU. Maybe what's at stake for this one? What are you looking for out of the Jayhawks when they go to Raleigh?
I mean, I think it's just a big confidence game, like to give you, know that you can go win on the road, where They haven't been able to do that yet. They've only had one opportunity, and they lost at North Carolina. So being able to go and show that you can win on the road, just another game to work Peterson kind of in and get everybody comfortable with him. It's not a do or die type of game in, mid-December, but I do think it's just important to kind of get them feeling good and get them some confidence going into the holiday season. Because while the schedule's been awesome, they don't really play another elite opponent until January 13th against Iowa State. So they've got a stretch here where they can kind of get some confidence building because, they should be on a nice little winning streak by the time they get to that game, especially if they can win this one.
Man, I'm glad you brought up Iowa State because I wanted to bring you back to the conference overall.
Uh-huh.
And when we talk about, there was that run in the Big 12 where Kansas just owned this conference for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I never say never. It's hard for me to envision a college basketball landscape where any run like that ever happens again. In a conference like this now, where you're looking at 4 teams, CJ, that are ranked in the top 10, and one of them's not Kansas in this league. Arizona's undefeated. Iowa State just crushed Purdue the other day. How good is the top half of this Big 12?
Yeah, it's really, really good. I thought Iowa State was going to be good but not elite just because they lost both their shooting guards who were kind of their go-to scorers a year ago. And, they're bringing in freshmen at those positions. And at that position, you're like, I know the guys they got coming back are good, but that team, that's a national title contender. Arizona's a national title contender. I'm not sure if I'd call BYU a national title contender, but really, really good. And we've seen in games like last night against Clemson, they can just put together a stretch where they can come back from a big hole because they're so talented. AJ DeBansa is the real deal. Just I think we've seen in small doses, we've seen Darren Peterson is the real deal. Those teams are really good. The middle's pretty good.
What about Houston, by the way? Would you put them in that category too?
Yeah. Houston's good. I don't think that I think kind of like last year, they're not great yet. But, man, we saw last year what Kelvin Sampson can do. Give him a little bit of time. He's going to get his team there. And they've got one of the best freshmen in the country, too, in their point guard, Kingston Flemings. He's been outstanding. I was there in the fall. It was clear, man, that's their best player. And, it takes a little time when a freshman's your best player to just kind of figure out how it all clicks. But I think the middle's better this year. Oklahoma State's undefeated, haven't really played anybody, but, pretty good team. I think Colorado, Arizona State, there's some teams that you weren't sure what they'd be. UCF even that are a little better than expected. I'd say the only teams that have been maybe not quite at the level that you thought they might be is Texas Tech, who's still been pretty good and I think will be fine in the end. Baylor and K-State's been a disappointment, although I watched K-State against Nebraska here in Kansas City, and K-State played pretty well that day, and they've got some talent and they might figure it out eventually. There's enough pieces there where they could be a middle of the pack team. So I think the middle and the bottom are probably better this year, and then the top is about as deep as it's ever been. Like you said, 4 in the top 10. I think Kansas could be a team that gets there maybe eventually. Texas Tech could get back to that level. So yeah, there's 6 really there's 6 teams that could get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
So you and just maybe for comparison, you mentioned Michigan loaded up with the bigs. Duke's undefeated right now as well. We saw what UConn has to offer when they came to Allen Fieldhouse. How would you size up, maybe some of these other powers, these powerhouse programs when it comes to those teams you just mentioned as title contenders from the Big 12?
Oh, I think Michigan is Michigan and Iowa State have almost kind of and Arizona away, but the way Michigan and Iowa State have kicked the crap out of really pretty good teams lately is eye-opening. I do think there's like a tier of like Michigan State, Iowa State, Arizona, maybe that are and Connecticut might be there too, that are kind of separating themselves. Duke's been really good. I've been a little bit skeptical of Duke all year. They're so young. I don't really think Michigan State's pretty good, but not elite. I don't know that they've beaten an elite team yet where those other teams have, like, because Kansas without Peterson, like, let's be honest, that's just not an elite team, right?
Right.
So I'm a little skeptical of Duke. I might have to walk back eventually because Cam Boozer's probably been the most impressive player in the country so far. So they're really good, but they're young, especially in the backcourt. But those other teams, like the common thing is like they're just so big, so hard to score against in the paint. And I think that's what's like, you look last year in the Final Four, all those teams were big up front, can really offensive rebound. I think teams are just getting bigger. It's been easier to keep bigs around because of NIL. Guys aren't quite in a hurry to get to the NBA. And I think college basketball, from just a strictly talent perspective, is like maybe the best we've seen it since the 90s, just because so many guys stick around. This freshman class is super special. And then, there's guys that are like Keaton Wagler, guy that I've been watching for years. Went to my son's high school, went to the same school I went to. Like, he's killing it at Illinois. Nobody knew who he was, 3-4 months ago. So this class is really, really deep. All the international guys that have come over because of NIL when they wouldn't usually come over. Like, the talent level in college basketball is about as good as it's been in a really long time.
Why don't you go ahead and give a shout out to your alma mater then while you're at it?
Shawnee Northwest Cougars. Let's go.
Northwest Cougars. Yeah.
State champs.
My nephew was a point guard at Shawnee Mission South.
He's a good little guy.
Yeah.
He's a good little player. Yeah.
But the length of some of these teams like Northwest, and even, I think my nephew was only a guy under 6'3" in the starting lineup for South, but
you were big,
yeah, to go back to what you're saying about the bigs, and maybe we'll wrap it up on this point, is how much that also has to do with the NBA. Everybody's big and everybody can shoot. It used to be like, back in my day, if you were a 7-footer in college, you were a first-round pick and you were going to play 10 years in the NBA, and that's just not the case anymore. You still got to be able to move. You got to be able to defend the perimeter. You got to be able to shoot. Yeah. So there's more room for some big guys to stick around in college. Does that have something to do with it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's the way that the big kids come up now too. Like, they come up playing on the perimeter. And you see so many teams playing like 5-out basketball, and they're able to, because these big kids and some of the international kids coming over have helped too. But like, you can play through your 5-man and he can, hit cutters and dribble handoffs, and some of them can step up and make a three. Like, that's almost a cheat code. So I think you have more skilled bigs than we've had in the past. And then like I said, maybe some of the old school traditional bigs are sticking around longer because, maybe sometimes like a Zach Edey, people didn't think there was a place for him in the NBA, right? And he stuck around for a while out. He's proven he was pretty elite. Like, there was a place for him in the NBA. But I just think like the Houston Rockets on game 1, what did they start? Like, basically 5-7 footers. Like, there's teams just playing huge lineups in the NBA. One of my colleagues just did a story on offensive rebounding rates being higher in the NBA than like ever before. It's the highest in college since I think like 2012 or something like that. So, teams are just bigger, and like the ability to win the rebounding wars has been about as important as it's ever been before.
Yeah. And if you can make a few $1 million while you're developing for the next level, that's not a bad deal either. It's a good option. I like what you said there. Best talent we've seen in a long time. So, we could talk all this stuff about transfer portal and NIL and everything. Quality of basketball is one of the things we want to see, and it's really good. And the quality of coverage is great too. CJ Moore at The Athletic is one of the best, man. Hey, really appreciate the time, CJ. Thanks a lot. Hopefully we talk to you again real soon.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, that is CJ Moore, and we will be back to wrap things up. Well, actually, we're gonna have another interview and then wrap things up. This is Rock Chalk Sports on Kansas Nation. Hey, man.
Crown Toyota and Crown Volkswagen, getting you where you need to go. Celebrating over 30 years and honored by Best of Lawrence. Visit crownautomotive.com and explore the latest models, check out specials, schedule expert maintenance, body shop, and repair services, all with ease. Experience the Crown difference. Miles Snares Crown Automotive, 3400 South Iowa, Lawrence, Kansas. Supporting Kansas athletics.
Kick off your holiday season with a festive walk through the lights at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. The Luminary Walk is celebrating 26 years of bringing holiday magic to the community, proudly presented by FNBO, Westlake Ace Hardware, Sarin Energy Solutions, and WeLightKC.com. Wander through glowing gnome and fairy villages, candlelit winter woods, live music, and thousands of electric lights. Tickets available today at opabg.org.
Listen up, guys. A new year is coming, and you deserve to feel your absolute best. Whether you're chasing peak performance, trying to reignite intimacy, or simply want to feel your best, Game Day Men's Health Lawrence is your calling. Situated in a plush man cave setting, their services for testosterone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, vitamin therapy, and weight loss are sure to give you the boost you need. Make an online appointment today by searching for Game Day Men's Health Lawrence. Step up your game in 2025 with Game Day.
Transform your home into a serene oasis with a pro-built pool and patio sunroom. Their expertly crafted sunrooms offer breathtaking views, natural light, and year-round comfort. Whether you're relaxing, entertaining, or simply enjoying the beauty of nature, their sunrooms are the perfect addition to your home. Visit them at 4708 Northwest Gateway Avenue in Riverside to see their stunning selection. Pro-built pool and patio, where your dream living space comes to life.
Hey Kansas City, Ochak Baji here. When I keep up with my Oak Park Northmen, there's only one place I go. 810 Varsity and 810varsity.com.
Scores, features, rankings, predictions, and playoff brackets. Watch games online and, of course, the best social media coverage from Lawrence to Lee Summit, Lenexa to Liberty. Plus, the region's biggest events with college combines, basketball showcases, and more. All at one place. And I'll let Ochai tell you again.
Check it out now. Kansas City's home for high school sports. 810varsity.com.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from Family Leisure. Come to Family Leisure so we can make your holiday shopping easy. We are your one-stop shop for incredible deals on hot tubs, arcade games, theater seats, grills, massage chairs, and much more in stock and ready to go. Come in for your Chiefs fan to see our inventory of Chiefs clocks, banners, and area rugs. Decorate your game room with our dartboards, gaming chairs, pool, and shuffleboard tables. Mention A10 and save more at Family Leisure, K10 and Ridgeview in Olathe.
What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out kansasnation.com. What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out kansasnation.com.
And we continue with Rock Chalk Sports here on Kansas Nation. Nate Bukaty with you, joined by the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks now, the one and only Brian Hanni. Brian, how are you, man?
Hey, buddy, doing great. Great to be on with you, my friend.
It's we got to hang out a little bit at the Union Broadcasting Christmas party. How was your bowling game, by the way? I got beat by my entire family. I saw you were out there knocking some pins down as well. How'd you do?
It took me a while to warm up, but yeah, I think I finished with a meager 126. So definitely not my gift, but we had fun. It's so cool of Chad Boger and the whole Union Broadcasting crew to put on such a wonderful night. Hey,
if you're getting into triple digits in bowling, in my opinion, that's a good round or whatever you call it, a frame. I don't even know. So you color me impressed if you're disappointed with a 127. That might be my career high, I think. So well done there. Okay, hey, listen, it's a busy time. I've had a lot of fun filling in for the guys through the course of this week because we've got basketball to talk about on the men's and women's side. We got a big volleyball match coming up on Friday in Nebraska. And so I feel like you're the perfect guy to kind of touch on all of it, So let's start with the men's basketball side first, though, because you were there at T-Mobile, of course, on Sunday. 20-point win over, your historic rival Mizzou, in a game that was close, and maybe I was a little nervous, at least at one point in the first half. A lot of different storylines in it, but maybe what was the biggest thing that you took away from it as you walked out of there with Kansas getting that 20-point victory?
I think maybe the biggest takeaway, Nate, is that if there was one thing that at times in the last month without Darren Peterson that we've labored to do, that's score the basketball consistently, efficiently against good teams. You think about the Duke loss, the second half versus UConn. it took all of 90 seconds of Darren being back to be reminded not just of what he himself brings and what he himself can do offensively, but how much easier it's going to make it for the other four guys on the floor based on the defensive attention that he demands and attracts each and every game. And so, Kansas defensively has been a great team over the first 10 games, leading the Big 12 and 6th nationally in blocks per game and 3-point percentage defense. They've been a really good defensive team, but at times without that alpha scorer who can go out and get 25 on any given night and commands double teams every trip down the floor, at times the offense hasn't always been humming along. And I just think we were reminded very quickly, starting with his first 3-point make, but then also seeing the way Mizzou tried to defend him, of what this offense will be capable of, not just with his firepower and hitting 3 or 4 threes a game, but the open looks that everybody else on the perimeter is going to get, the penetrating pitch to set up the bigs that's going to now be possible. There are so many things that the return of Darren Peterson brings to this Kansas offense. And so for some of the stretches without him, when it was a little bit painful to watch offensively at times, that's not going to be the case at all once he's back and fully 100%. And we're just so excited to see what that could look like these next few months.
Yeah, no doubt. And the dynamics of a basketball team, Brian, can be a really interesting thing, right? There's the on the court stuff. There's the off the court stuff. From what I understand, this is a group of players that really genuinely like each other in both spaces, which I think is an important thing. But you do wonder, right, when you have a player like Darren Peterson who just takes so much of the attention in the gym, right? Everybody's looking at him. I got the sense, I don't know about you, that even early in the game, his own teammates were looking at him a little bit, and he was trying to get them involved, and they were kind of standing back watching him. And I guess that's one of those things where there's that positive where the rest of the players got to kind of find themselves a little bit and take on more responsibility, grow confidence without him. But now it's just a matter of meshing those two things together, and it almost seemed like that was playing out in real time for us in that game.
Yeah, and that was a significant concern that some people had of what would it be like when he gets injected back into this, and will there be any standing around and just letting Darren take over? There was maybe a little of that early, but I think that they found their flow as the game went on, and I think that they worked in concert much better together, and they'll find their groove in a rest of the month of December where you only play 3 more games. And so this is probably, I don't know, I don't want to speak for all the players, but I would guess this time of year is one of the coaching staff's favorite times of year and one of the players' least favorite times because the practices are longer. There's not as many games to play. Obviously, the guys prefer the games, but there's more chances for this coaching staff to really see what they've got, to play with this new combination where they're really loving the starting lineup of Tiller, Bidunga, White, 3 really long, big guys. And obviously Trey's only 6'7", but before the injury to Darren, you had Trey playing alongside Flory and Bryson was coming off the bench. One thing that Darren's absence forced upon this team was playing with that bigger combination. And now you get a chance to practice with it on a daily basis with Melvin and Darren in the backcourt, those other 3 comprising your bigs. And I think it's Kansas's optimal lineup in so many regards. Biggest, longest lineup out there for the back line defensively, best lineup to go crash the offensive and defensive glass. And you still have firepower that can score from the perimeter because both Bryson and Trey can step up and hit a 3 or 2 per game. And so I really like this group. But my point of mentioning that is they'll get a chance to get back in the flow together, to know when to initiate and when to defer, to know when to let Darren do his thing, but when to have your head on a swivel, because if the double team's coming his way, he's going to find you with excellent floor vision. He's a great passer. There's going to be way more open looks for guys like Trey and obviously Melvin. Cole, we hope, gets going again. They're all going to be benefactors of this fantastic reemergence of Darren Peterson just because of the defensive focus that he'll demand every game. So I think it'll be a work in progress the next few, but I like it that they've got a lot of time to get reacclimated together with obviously a big challenge on Saturday at NC State. But after that, a couple of games you would expect them to hold serve within before things really get interesting with the start of league play.
We're going to get into this matchup against North Carolina State in a minute because it is an interesting one, a good challenge on the road too. Another chance for KU to really kind of, cut their teeth in a true away game in a hostile environment. But we'll talk about that in a moment. One other thing I wanted to cover with you is I think another side benefit of this stretch without Darren Peterson, did the bench get a little longer? Guys like Jamari McDowell and Elmarco Jackson. Elmarco Jackson had that one game where he put the team on his back. He had a stretch in the UConn game where he really helped contribute to the team. And I don't know that you necessarily want to say that you got to count on those guys to be big-time point producers game in and game out, but when you need a little boost off the bench, when somebody gets in foul trouble, did the bench get a little bit longer during that stretch?
It really did. And it was the greatest silver lining, the best byproduct of the absence you could have possibly had. I think that when we lost at North Carolina in Chapel Hill, it was pretty obvious that we had some transfer pieces and some young players that the lights looked a little too bright and the stage was a little too big at that early instance of a snapshot of our non-con schedule. And if Darren continued to play and they continued to let him do 40% of the heavy lifting and they found their footing along the way, there's no doubt it would have taken a lot longer for those guys to settle in, believe they belong, and be big-time contributors. Now, not everybody got better in those 7 games that he was out. Not everybody took a step forward. Jaden Dawson had the hand injury. He missed some time. Cole Rosario, unfortunately, went through a tough shooting stretch and fell behind the likes of the guys you just mentioned, Jamari and Elmarco. But for me, there were 4 key guys on the perimeter that really stepped forward and not only got some of those early season jitters in transitioning to high major conference college hoops out of the way, but also just realized, hey, I've got a big role on this team that I can step into. They need me to do this, this, and that. And if I bring it, we're a much better team because of it. And for me, obviously, Trey White and Melvin Council, the 2 most notable guys that carried the mail while Darren was out. In fact, Bill went as far as saying on Monday that Melvin Council was the hands-down MVP of our season to this point. But Trey led us in scoring the bulk of the games that Darren was gone, and both of those guys just took on more of the onus to go out there and be the initiator, to be the alpha scorer. But specific to the 2 you mentioned, I couldn't be happier for the progress, the maturation, the development of Elmarco and Jamari, 2 guys that sat out last season for different reasons. Obviously, Jackson had the torn patella tendon, which is one of the most difficult injuries to come back from, one of the longest recoveries, to get the explosiveness and the burst back. Not everybody gets it all the way back. He absolutely has. And what people forget is before he went down with that injury in the spring following his freshman year, a McDonald's All-American who didn't have great numbers his first season, the reports we got out of the pickup games and some of the spring practices they were having unofficially was that he was the standout player. He was taking over and he was really turning the corner, and then he has the injury setback. And so it's like just when you're getting to the cusp of showing what you were hyped to be, it was all taken away. But he used that year to not only rehab the knee, but to really study the game. And I think he was an outstanding teammate. He and Jamari both being vocal leaders from the sideline last year, finding ways to impact even if they weren't out there on game day. And in Jamari's case, he was healthy last year. He just redshirted. He worked on his shot a ton. You know this, Nate. You've been to the McCarthy Hall. They've got a miniature basketball gym in their dorm. And if he wasn't over at the practice court or at Allen Fieldhouse getting up shots, he was coming down at night, putting up 1,000 shots a day. And he got that shot so much more consistent. He has so much confidence now to square up and drain those threes. And he's always been a guy with great defensive instincts and a knack for getting tips and deflections and steals. And we saw that with the 2 starts he made out in Vegas. We saw that with the start versus UConn. Obviously, Elmarco's game versus Tennessee, the high watermark for his young career as he went from a really rough first half to the best output in a half of any time we'd seen him suit up at Kansas, 17 total points. And so for those 2 guys who went through so much a year ago to come out the other side, so much better for it, and now have the confidence themselves to step up and deliver, but specifically the confidence from the head coach and their teammates that we can trust these guys. We are so much better for it. So to me, that's the best silver lining of Darren missing that month. And we got 4 guys on that perimeter that are worlds better than what they were 1 month ago.
It's really an interesting point when you what you're talking about right now is kind of making me think about the arc of a season for a player and for a team. Basketball is a long season at the collegiate level, right? When you're starting in October now and you're going all the way into March, because I think a lot of times I have a tendency to think of the growth or progression from one year to the next, right? Like, after his freshman year, he grew a bunch and now he's a sophomore and now he's this. I think about Flory Badunga and how far he's come from one year to the next. But another aspect of that is what happens to a player through the course of the year. I think we saw the flip side of it last year. We saw some players kind of regress, whether it was from a mentality standpoint, a team chemistry standpoint, a team that was winning some big games in November, all of a sudden seemed like it had lost all of its mojo by the time we got late into the conference play and into postseason play. You mentioned a couple of these guys that are already showing growth in the middle of this season, still with a long way to go. And I think of a guy like Cole Rosario. You mentioned him maybe getting his shot back. I don't know. You and I have been watching KU basketball for decades, and how many times you see a young guy come in with a reputation as a great shooter, and he's just a little off early on in his, the game's moving a little fast for him. You may be a little amped up. Maybe there's just a little extra on the shot because he's playing a little faster. And then almost invariably, I feel like with those players, there's a time that comes when all of a sudden the game just slows down and the shots that they're missing a little bit start falling. I feel like that's coming for him. And the kind of the Easter egg thing about it, or whatever you want to call it, the surprise there is none of us know when, right? Like, none of us know when that moment will be. But I feel like there's a really good possibility we see that at some point through the course of this year.
Completely agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. And, when he first got here in the summertime, there were instant comparisons to the guy over my right shoulder here, Christian Brown, because of the body type, the athleticism, the fearlessness with which he would fly in and get offensive rebounds or bow up to defend a bigger player. He just had this tenacity and fearlessness about him from day one. I remember his first day on campus. I was lucky enough to be there for his first practice. And I've told this story before to Sean and Daniel on this show, and you never want to create too much hype. But I'm telling you, Nate, day one, he was the third best player on the floor. There was Darren, there was Flory, and it's not that he was that every day. But day one, I watched him get his hand in the cookie jar and steal the lunch money twice from Jaden Dawson and Trey White 10 minutes into arriving on campus. And they're like, who's this dude? And he would rip and run and punch a right-hand jam on the other end. And it wasn't cocky or anything. It was just like, whoa, this guy's quick. He's got great defensive instincts. He's way more physically developed for a typical reclassified 17-year-old. And he came in with this headstrong, I belong right away. Now, you get into real game action in the season and you're playing in these 17,000-seat arenas, even going back to the preseason at the Yum Center at Louisville, and sometimes it does feel like the stage is a little big and you miss a three-pointer that goes over the rim by a couple of feet because you're too amped up, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, God, I just airballed one. That happened a couple times. And suddenly the guy that you and I have watched in practice hit 7 out of 8 from 3. It's a little different when the lights are on and the popcorn's popping, right? But let me tell you, he comes from a great family. He's got a tremendous head on his shoulders. He takes tough coaching well. He just needs to see some extended stretches of the ball going through the hole, because all the raw God-given attributes are there from an athleticism standpoint. The work ethic, the character is all built in with him. He just needs to see some repeated success. And then I think he's right back to being on that trajectory of being, I think, in a couple of years, a first-round NBA draft pick. I don't see it necessarily this year unless he has a Johnny Furphy-like January and February, which he could. You never know. But I think by the time he's at the end of his sophomore year, this is one of our best players, because everything from a mental makeup and physical gifted standpoint is there. He just needs that in-game success repeated over and over. And then I think some early season jitters go by the wayside. But he can fill it up for 3 threes a game. He can D up. There's aspects of his game there that they're still working with him on. But I love the way he brings it on both ends of the floor, and I'm excited about his future. He just needs to weather the storm a little bit.
It's wild how accelerated the timeline is for players now, right? We're like, maybe this year, but definitely by a sophomore year. I mean, we're talking about like the guy over your shoulder, Christian Brown. 3 years it took, to get to that point. Ochai Agbaji was by the time he was a senior, and those guys became first-round picks. But it's like people want to see it now, right? Like that's just kind of the nature of the beast in today's world.
It's crazy, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, a guy like that, he at the early onset of the summer thought he might stay for another year of prep ball, and all of a sudden he's fast tracked to Kansas, and he used the line which is used by a lot of people now. He didn't quote it originally, but he said, and he meant this humbly, by the way. It comes across as like a overly confident quote, but he said, "Once you're the best player in a gym, find a new gym," and that's why he decided to leave down in Atlanta. He was playing one of the premier prep programs down there, and come to Kansas, come to Division I basketball, because once you outgrow where you're at, you need to take on that next challenge. And I think early on, he realized very quickly that he does belong at this level, but also it's going to be really tough to replicate that success night in and night out. And so it'll be a process that could take 3 years. You never know. But he came in with a lot of hype. He will continue to build upon that hype. And with the best college coaching you can get anywhere from a player development standpoint right here at Kansas, I think he has a very bright future in front of him. But you're right, Nate. It's way different from when you and I first started calling games together, and you had 4-year players as the regular norm with maybe the occasional junior season early entry guy. And then very quickly it became sophomores like Darrell Arthur. And then you got guys all of a sudden that you're just hoping to have for 6 months on campus, and they're already off to the next level.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had CJ Moore on the show, and he's talking about the talent level in college. One thing that does make it different now, the challenge is holding on to the guys, because we're about to talk about North Carolina State, and you're going to look at a roster filled with guys that are on their third and fourth school, by the time they got to NC State. But if you can, you still do have a chance to hold on to go out and develop them. They can make money while they're developing at the college level too. So hopefully we start to see a little bit of that. I don't know where it's going to head. Let's get into this North Carolina State game now. Brian, 4:30 Saturday, 2 7-3 teams. And NC State, they've been in the polls. They've been in the top 25 before suffering a couple of losses here recently. So what kind of a challenge do you see in front of the Jayhawks for this one?
Well, obviously it starts with Darian Williams, and Kansas fans probably shudder when they hear that name because he's had some really big games against us. I think back to the 23-24 season, he had a 30-point game when he was 12 for 12, and we lost by 29 down in Lubbock. And he was far and away the best player on the floor, did not miss, had 11 rebounds on top of it. And he's had some other prolific scoring games to the point that Kansas really wanted him in the portal. And Bill Self joked at his press conference yesterday that he said, unless any of you out there talking about the media came into some money recently with a relative passing or something like that, we weren't going to have the funds to win that bidding war when they already had so much committed to the players already on their roster, like Flory and Darren and the like. But this is a guy that they've long admired in similar ways to they admired Kevin McCullough when he was at Texas Tech. I remember doing interviews with Bill Self before we played Tech in the Big 12 championship game, and he was talking so glowingly about Kevin McCullough and how impactful he was on both ends. And man, I wish we could get that guy someday at Kansas. And he didn't mean it like they were going to go get him in the portal right away. He's like, that's the type of player we'd love to have. And sure enough, KU wound up getting 2 seasons out of him. They were close, Nate, really close with Darian. I think they thought they had him at one point. But obviously the bidding war escalated to a point where at some point it's just not realistic if you want to continue to have the rest of your roster look as good as it does. And so NC State wins him, and he's had a nice start to the year. He hasn't posted otherworldly numbers for them, but 16-5 is what he's averaging. And again, this is a stretch 4 that can back you down and has a myriad of moves in the mid-range, but also can step back and hit 3 or 4 threes in a given game, as we saw him do versus Kansas a couple of times. So great talent there. And you look at it, I mean, up and down this lineup, they've got firepower. Coach Self spoke to it yesterday when he said, if Kansas has been a team that's been really good defensively, but at times has had some offensive inconsistencies, NC State has been just the opposite. They have been darn near prolific offensively, averaging almost 90 a game with 5 players averaging double figures. And, it's not an example of 5 guys where, one guy only played a couple of games and he's averaging double figures. No. The guys that average double figures have played in all 10 games that they've played, and they've got a 6 that averages 9.8 a game. So really it's 6 guys at darn near 10 a game. They will chuck up a lot of threes. They will post a ton of points. They will get after you. But I think Kansas has some opportunities within their defense, talking about NC State's defense, in which this Kansas offense could get going a little bit because, as Coach said, they're kind of just the opposite of us, still trying to find a defensive identity in addition to Williams and Copeland and all the firepower they have on the other end of the floor. So we'll see how Kansas can continue to bring it. We have the best 3-point percentage defense in the Big 12, 6th best nationally. They're going to have to close out on the wing because you got some guys that hit it at a really high clip. Williams, most notably, at 47% as a high volume 3-point shooter guy. But they've got 3 others that average 50% or better that maybe don't shoot it quite as much as him from 3. But really, really impressive offense. It's a good environment. They play in the same stadium that the NHL hockey team does. So this is kind of fun. It's not your typical Kansas, or not your typical campus environment, I should say, but at the same time, big time venue. This will be their premier non-conference home game, and I'm excited to see how our guys go in there and compete. Didn't get the result we wanted down the road in Chapel Hill a month ago, but here's hoping as we complete the triangle, playing Duke, Carolina, and NC State all in one non-con. Hopefully we'll come out on top in this one because this is one of those wins that I think will look better and better as the season goes on based on how good I think this NC State team can eventually be.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown there, Brian. And you mentioned the 5 guys in double figures, the 6 man that's almost in 10 points a game as well. So you can't really focus your defense in one area. That's like you said, probably part of the reason that Darian's not putting up even bigger numbers is because they really share the ball well. And one of the guys that stands out, you talk about the triangle. This guy's made 2/3 of the triangle in his college career. Ben Allen Lubin was at North Carolina. Now he's at North Carolina State, which I think that's, boy, what a sign of the times that is. But 6'9", 250 pounds. KU's got some good size, but what a kind of a challenge that could be for the front line of the Jayhawks.
Absolutely. He's averaging 13 and 7. Really scores at a high clip and similar to Flory numbers with the field goal percentage at almost 68%. And so a guy that certainly will be a major emphasis for Kansas in the interior defensively. And that's on Flo, that's on Bryson. The way Kansas, moves guys around defensively, switching on ball screens, there'll be times where Trey's got to step in and slide over and pick him up depending on who's on the floor. But very imposing, impressive talent in the interior. And, if you focus too much attention, he's really good at kicking it right back out and finding that open guy on the wing to bury it from deep. So impressive, no doubt, and excited to see how Kansas matches up. But I just feel like while we don't necessarily have the muscle inside that we've had with, Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams front court a year ago, we're so much longer, we're so much bouncier. Rim protection and shot blocking is just so much more in vogue with this particular group. And that's not to say that those previous guys couldn't bring it defensively. Certainly KJ was the type that could guard all 5 positions on the floor, and he had some major moments there. But in terms of shot alterers and rim protectors, having 2 bouncy guys like that on the back line. I mean, Tiller had 5 blocks the other day. We averaged 6.5 blocks per game. Flory Bidunga, one of the best in the conference and the country at blocking shots right now. And so there'll be plenty of things they want to do before the catch on Lubin in limiting those quality post touches and pushing him out from the basket. But it's just so much more, I don't want to say it's not a relief, but it's exciting to see that type of backline athleticism. Reminds me a little bit when we had Udoka Azubuike back there, and he was averaging 3 blocks a game and 3 dunks a game. To have that long, athletic, bouncy 5-man, and we got 2 of them side by side now, and then a guy like Trey White who can pitch in as well, as versatile as he is with his size, it makes us in a much better position, I think, defensively and on the glass. Now, hasn't always been great on the glass. We got outboarded by 15 versus UConn in that second half, but I think that's an area we can continue to get better and better at.
Yeah, you got to get those rebounds if the other team's going to hit more threes than you, right? Like that's one of the things about today's game is, and when you talk about North Carolina's ability to shoot, if the other team's hitting more threes, then you got to find possessions in other ways, turnovers, rebounds. because it becomes a math game at that point. I think it's going to be a great match. Like you said, styles make fights in the old expression. This is a good contrast in styles between these two teams, so it should really be a fun one on Saturday.
It really should be. And like I said, it's not our signature non-con win if we get it, but it's a really nice feather in our cap that I think will continue to look better and better when you look back on what KU accomplished. It's amazing how close we are to being 9-1 right now, even though we played shorthanded for 7 games. But because we didn't get the Carolina game, didn't get the Duke game, narrowly lost to UConn, this would be a quality true road game victory to get if Kansas can secure it. And then you got a chance versus Towson and Davidson to really finish on an upswing and feel good about where you're at. We're currently, to start the week, 8th in the nation in strength of schedule. It's a little bit misleading because of all the mid-major teams that have their guarantee bye games to where everybody they're playing this time of year is like a top 50 team. Once they get into their league, the Texas Southerns of the world will fall back down. There's only 2 major conference teams that have a tougher strength of schedule than Kansas, Alabama and UConn. Bill Self firmly believes once we get into league play and we're playing the gauntlet that is the Big 12 every night, we will finish the regular season and head into Selection Sunday with the number 1 strength of schedule in America. And so if we can get to that, quarter pole, or I guess it'd be a third of the way at the end of non-con with just 3 losses, assuming you can find a way to get a big win on Saturday and hold serve at home, I think knowing what we've been through from a player availability standpoint and knowing what we've gone through in terms of an ambitious schedule, you'd have to feel pretty good about that, wouldn't you, at 10-3? So that's what's at stake these next couple of weeks. But the biggest challenge of those remaining 3, obviously, is Saturday.
Yeah, big one on Saturday. Speaking of big games, I got to ask you about this before we sign off here, Brian. Friday night, the women's volleyball team at Nebraska in the Sweet 16. And I haven't brought this up on the show yet this week because it's just a crazy number, but the all-time record, 88-0-1, Nebraska against Kansas in volleyball. You were not old enough to be alive when the one tie happened. And the one time Kansas did not lose, I was a ripe 1-year-old in 1977 when the Kansas women got a draw there. But this is an opportunity for a program under a new head coach. Speaking of tough schedules, they're battle tested. They've played a lot. To go make some history, man. I mean, I just think this is an exciting moment. No matter what happens, kind of nothing to lose. Go up there and see what you can do. You got a puncher's chance in this game, in this match, I should say.
I completely agree. And what a job Matt Ulmer has done in taking over for a legend in Ray Bouchard. He stepped in right away, and it's been a near seamless transition. Some signature moments throughout the season amidst that schedule that you talked about, and now a Sweet 16 run on the heels, by the way, of Coach Lee's Sweet 16 run in soccer as well. So both those Travis Goff hires have been absolute home runs out the gates. And to see the way he stepped in, he's recruited tremendously well. The link that we have at the net, and he's going across the pond to get some of this talent. I mean, he's recruiting all over and making Kansas a national and international brand. And so, yeah, the history doesn't favor us, and neither does the rankings coming in. But go up there with nothing to lose and everything to gain and see if you can shock the world with a big-time upset. But regardless, to think that they go to the Sweet 16 in his first year, to think that they're equipping this program with some resources in this revenue share era that we live in to continue to build on this roster. I think Kansas volleyball is here to stay. Some of the best facilities in the country with the Horse Family Volleyball Arena, a hot young coach who's a real name within the industry and has an awesome staff around him, and some serious momentum, not just within our league, but nationally. I think KU volleyball is going to be an annual place to be and be seen at the Horse every fall, but also expect them active participants in the month of December with what he has in front of him here at Kansas.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's you can see all the evidence there, and something just tells me no matter what happens in this match on Friday, we'll be looking back at it in a few years and saying that was one of those watershed moments where this program realized, another step in the process, of learning, because they're the standard, right? Nebraska's the standard. You go test yourself against them and you grow from it no matter what. Maybe you knock them off and then it's really a catapult. But either way, I just think it's such a great opportunity and one we'll look back on and say, that was a big moment in the trajectory of the program. So I hope everybody gets a chance to check that out on Friday. you're going to be traveling to North Carolina for that big game. Brian, thank you so much for the time, man. We appreciate it. Have a great call for Kansas and North Carolina State this weekend.
Yeah, can't wait, buddy. Always fun talking sports with you, one of my great friends in the industry. So excited about your success. And I know you've been talking KU sports all week. You do such a great job on the Jayhawker, but as one of your close friends, I'm so pumped for you because of the soccer ambassador you are. Obviously a national, international name when it comes to broadcasting, but you have brought so much attention and notoriety to the soccer culture within Kansas City. So as we prepare for the World Cup this summer, seeing you on stage at the Power and Light last week during the Draw Watch Party show and everything you've got going on with your book and all the events coming up. I hear there's a new podcast in the works with a pretty famous co-host. Just know that as one of your close friends, I'm fired up for what the next 6 months in your life are going to look like. And as a soccer novice that's just learned about this stuff by listening to you, I got the itch, man. I'm pumped for it. So I've had fun watching you on Rock Chalk Sports this week, but I can't wait to see the new podcast and read that book when it's out too.
Hey, man, I appreciate the plug, pre-plug there for you. That's my buddy Brian Hanni right there helping me out. Now, I'll say this. There's going to be somebody base camping at Rock Chalk Park. And once we find out who that national team is, I'll give you a rundown. I'll tell you everything I know about them. We'll have a good talk. We got to make sure we roll out the welcome mat, welcome this national team into Kansas City because they're going to come away going, man, I had no idea what an amazing place Kansas is. And the history of basketball, they're going to learn about it, the ties that basketball has to soccer. We're going to have a lot of fun, Brian. So we got to keep our eye out on that. Okay, buddy?
I love it. Absolutely. Looking forward to it, bud.
All right. That is Brian Hanni. That's the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks right there. They're going to be taking on the North Carolina State this weekend. All kinds of great stuff happening at Kansas Nation right now. We'll take a break back after this on Rock Chalk Sports.
Crown Toyota and Crown Volkswagen, getting you where you need to go. Celebrating over 30 years and honored by Best of Lawrence. Visit crownautomotive.com and explore the latest models, check out specials, schedule expert maintenance, body shop, and repair services, all with ease. Experience the Crown difference. Miles Snares Crown Automotive, 3400 South Iowa, Lawrence, Kansas. Supporting Kansas athletics.
Kick off your holiday season with a festive walk through the lights at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. The Luminary Walk is celebrating 26 years of bringing holiday magic to the community, proudly presented by FNBO, Westlake Ace Hardware, Sarin Energy Solutions, and WeLightKC.com. Wander through glowing gnome and fairy villages, candlelit winter woods, live music, and thousands of electric lights. Tickets available today at opabg.org.
Listen up, guys. A new year is coming, and you deserve to feel your absolute best. Whether you're chasing peak performance, trying to reignite intimacy, or simply want to feel your best, Game Day Men's Health Lawrence is your calling. Situated in a plush man cave setting, their services for testosterone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, vitamin therapy, and weight loss are sure to give you the boost you need. Make an online appointment today by searching for Game Day Men's Health Lawrence. Step up your game in 2025 with Game Day.
Transform your home into a serene oasis with a pro-built pool and patio sunroom. Their expertly crafted sunrooms offer breathtaking views, natural light, and year-round comfort. Whether you're relaxing, entertaining, or simply enjoying the beauty of nature, their sunrooms are the perfect addition to your home. Visit them at 4708 Northwest Gateway Avenue in Riverside to see their stunning selection. Pro-built pool and patio, where your dream living space comes to life.
Hey Kansas City, Ochai Baji here. When I keep up with my Oak Park Northmen, there's only one place I go. 810 Varsity and 810varsity.com.
Scores, features, rankings, predictions, and playoff brackets. Watch games online and, of course, the best social media coverage from Lawrence to Lee Summit, Lenexa to Liberty. Plus, the region's biggest events with college combines, basketball showcases, and more. All at one place. And I'll let Ochai tell you again.
Check it out now. Kansas City's home for high school sports. 810varsity.com.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays from Family Leisure. Come to Family Leisure so we can make your holiday shopping easy. We are your one-stop shop for incredible deals on hot tubs, arcade games, theater seats, grills, massage chairs, and much more in stock and ready to go. Come in for your Chiefs fan to see our inventory of Chiefs clocks, banners, and area rugs. Decorate your game room with our dartboards, gaming chairs, pool, and shuffleboard tables. Mention A10 and save more at Family Leisure, K10 and Ridgeview in Olathe.
What's up, everybody? Dan Peterson. Everybody go check out KansasNation.com.